Welcome, listeners, to another episode of Shooting Rabbits in a Barrel, a podcast brought to you by Scarecrow Consultants. Today, I'm very excited to be joined by Sven-Olaf. Hello.
Hello, nice to meet you, Jessica.
Nice to meet you too, and have a bit more of a conversation. We've passed each other at various Incozy and IFSI events, but this is the first time today that we're getting to sit down together. So thank you very much for giving up your time to be on the podcast. For those of our listeners who don't know you, would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, so my name is Sven-Olaf Schulze. I made my diploma in Germany at the University in Braunschweig for space engineering, and that's also where I started. So I started in space and made some projects there. Then I returned to lowest Earth orbit for aerospace. I was part of the chief engineer team for a military transport aircraft, and then I touched the ground, went to wind turbine manufacturers. And the last 15 years, I was in a consulting, more or less consulting in systems engineering, deploying all my knowledge I gained in the industry. And currently I'm working with LikesCon for systems engineering consulting in different industries.
Already, I didn't know that you had a background in space. I also did too. Okay, we won't turn this into now, let's chat about space things, but that's very exciting. Let's come back to that. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, I'm sure as a consultant, you have lots of good stories and you've seen lots of things across the industry. Fantastic. I'm excited. Okay, listeners, in case you have forgotten, we ask our guests 2 questions. What story would you like to share with us today? And what valuable systems engineering lesson did you learn? So, Sven-Olaf, what story would you like to share with us today?
Yeah, imagine you have a group of 20 people sitting in a room, all are engineers, but from 9 different countries and nations and cultures, background, and you want to design and develop a system. And then trouble starts, We are discussing hours and hours about an interface between 2 systems, subsystems, that they to integrate. And you are discussing forces. It was more a mechanical interface at that time. And you're discussing, and they were getting more and more angry, more and more, let's say, aggressive in defending their design solution, both left and right-hand side. And what happened? We were discussing it should be the interface a flange or a hinge.
Okay.
And that was really a trouble. And I think we burned so many hours. Imagine 20 people sitting many hours in a room discussing only the interface of a flange or a bracket and what is the right one. And that was really very severe. And I was looking to this scenery. Then I took 2 flip charts and I said, okay, in the middle I made the line and said, okay, bracket, hinge, draw your pictures and define it. And the problem was, at the end, it was a cross relationship. In one company, hinge was a bracket and bracket was a hinge. So we were talking 4 hours on the same interface, but using different definitions and wording based on our company and history on different cultures. And imagine then the cultural effect came in, that we had people from more the southern part and more from the northern part of Europe. So it was really very exciting, emotional, and we had a lot of breaks in between. Before I made this painting, and everyone was looking at each other and said, okay, and starting to laugh, because we were discussing the same design with the same interface, the same bolts and so on. Yeah, was really a very exciting exercise I had in my life in a project. And that's it. At least what I have made in these group experience, let's say.
Oh my goodness. That happens all the time. I have to say, for listeners who've not encountered this, maybe in your early career, watch out for it, because the same thing, different word, happens all the time. Oh my goodness. Okay. From that, what valuable systems engineering lesson did you learn?
I think you already mentioned this. Systems engineering is not only talking about it's important to talk about interfaces, about forces, dimensioning, integration, and so on, and who is doing what and who is responsible for the interface. I think this is very important. But nevertheless, I think the lesson learned is really what you mentioned is definition. It's understanding, having the same language and sharing the same language, building systems with different companies, different departments. I think you can also have this experience talking with someone from reliability managers, with the stress guy, and let's say an electrical guy. I think they are also using different words due to their language, their local, let's say, language of education.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is what I really learned is, first of all, if you recognize that there is some difficulties and discussions about left and right, I think you first go back, stop, and clarify definition if you have not already done this. Best case is for sure starting at the beginning of a project to harmonize definitions, wordings, and so on, and glossary. This cannot happen. Let's say you cannot define everything for the complete development time, but at least I think some main things you should clarify. For example, in some aerospace industries, there's a nice rule of thumb of who is responsible for the interface. It's always who is more located to the center of gravity. The party owns the interface to the outer side. So I think this is a nice rule of thumb. And if it's deployed, everyone agrees immediately on who is doing what.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have really to define what is a flange, what is a hinge, and what is a bracket.
Yeah.
And it could ease a lot of things, I think. But I think you have to distinguish between the IT version of how is it called in the IT when you're developing and defining ontologies.
Uh-huh.
Let's say, I think from my point of view, I would really also be very precise in these language definition. That ontologies is more really the language of IT and defining, let's say, the IT programming and coding. And glossary for me is really that when we talk to each other, at least I distinguish. It's also a lesson learned that you need both, and should not mix ontologies of IT, software coding and developing versus talking to people, making design definitions, concepts, and try to find the best possible solution. I think this is what I really learned. It's also between humans. Its definition of a glossary is also very, very important for these intercultural management of different companies, partnerships, and so on.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. You're giving me flashbacks to the time I was a requirements manager. So not just interfaces, but requirements as well in a multinational team. And the glossaries we had to be so exact because in one subsystem it was remote maintenance, and we had some machines will move things, some of them will transport things, some of them will transfer things, and some of them will maneuver them. What does that mean? And then if you explain it to somebody, like if you're trying to explain it to anybody, well, what's the difference between those? I don't know. So if you use those words interchangeably, or one team means maneuver and the other has a different definition for transfer, carnage. I think in the end we did something like a maneuver is if you move something within an order of magnitude of centimeters. Transfer was tens of meters, and this is so important across systems engineering to define these things. I had a follow-up question. The crossover between software and systems engineering. This happens quite a lot, doesn't it, with the language? We've sort of got some common history between us. Have you seen software type things creeping in anywhere else, or confusions between things that are typically software concepts in with systems engineering?
Maybe we can go a little bit up in the definition, or also what at least I recognized when I was working here in Germany, and also trying to convince, let's say, the government about to add, let's say, systems engineering as a job description.
Mm-hmm.
And what I really learned is that already still happens when I receive a request that they need a system engineer. They are looking for an IT person with the skills of coding and software architecture and so on, and not a systems engineer in the interpretation of being responsible for the system down to assembly level, and being more the integrator. I think this is what still has to be improved and is still an obstacle. And therefore also, if you go now to the software systems engineer, I really appreciate it, as I'm a mechanical engineer, a stress engineer from educational point of view. I would never apply for these kind of jobs, because I think it's really a dedicated skill and a dedicated knowledge you have to know. And therefore also you have to be careful when we talk about system engineer and software systems engineer, only to keep the difference. I also have to be very careful in using the words, and there's a lot of misunderstanding that for software system engineer seems to be easy, that when you're talking about an architecture, he is immediately a picture.
Oh, yeah.
And he knows, okay, I know the architecture of the aircraft, or a wind turbine or whatever. And it's so easy. But then if you really look inside his viewpoint, it's more related to, what do I have to control? What is what is the software architecture in the wind turbine? But not, the mechanical interface, the electrical interface, and accessibility, human machine interface. I think these kind of things is then to be added or clarified, let's say. I think these are the topics, what came into my mind when you asked the question.
For sure. I forgot about that. Of course, the constant confusion between job roles and job titles, and being rung by recruiters to say, so what coding languages do you write? And you go, I don't. I'm a systems engineer. They go, yes, I know. Anyway.
By the way, today I received an offer, and it was really mentioned, we are looking for a systems engineer, in brackets, no software engineer.
No software.
There was a lesson learned, at least from the recruiter.
Yeah. I'm tired of this happening to me. Yeah. Oh, fab. Sven-Olaf, thank you so much for that really good lesson. I have visions of all these people sort of laughing at this picture after 4 hours times 20 people's worth of time, finally realizing. Thank you so much for sharing your insight. It's been wonderful to have you on the podcast. Listeners, if you'd like to get involved and share your own story, you can get in touch with us at rabbits@scarecrowconsultants.co.uk, and we'll see you again next time. But for now, thank you so much, Sven-Olaf. Hope to see you again soon.
Thanks, Jess.